Okay, punctual. We are at exactly 2:30 on the dot. There was skepticism we'd be able to come here at 2:30, but all the doubters. Okay, just one quick thing. So we haven't had to do this so much. It hadn't really come up this year, but we're still enough away from from the crossover. And we did it last year. We had at least an informal rule that everybody gets an automatic hold, okay, at least one voting session. And so, that'll apply, I think, now until we get really super close to the crossover. I don't want that to be used for delay to get, past the crossover and all that. And I think there may be a bill or two here that folks I've already been told, they'd like to exercise that option. So to the extent you see a bill, you want some more information, you might want to do an amendment, or you're just a little uncut for whatever the reason. You don't have to give a reason, okay? You'll get an automatic hold, okay, folks? So any discussion about that? Correct. Once you hold it, yeah, I would agree with that. So let's just see where we go with this, and let's go through the list. We'll start with 178, Dara from Senator Klausmeyer.
Senate Bill 178, Agriculture Pollinator Habitat Plan, requirements for State Highway Administration. This bill requires the State Highway Administration's Pollinator Habitat Plan to include policies and procedures regarding the use of pollinator habitat areas along state highways. The bill was voted unanimously favorable with amendments by the Finance Committee. The amendment passed by the Finance Committee is on page 4 of your packet. There's a sponsor amendment which would allow the State Highway Administration to assess the reasonableness of pursuing particular policies. There is one further amendment on page 3 of your packet. This amendment would make clear that the bill would not interfere with implementation of state or local laws relating to weed control and other vegetation management.
To clarify, we're the 2 spot on this one. And I'm sorry, Senator Hester? No. Oh, okay. Do we need another packet? Let's get another packet. Yeah, right. So this is one that we were in the 2 spot of. Okay, this is one we're second. But that said, Senator Augustine.
I just want to say that I did share Senator Hester's amendment at the hearing with the folks there in finance. I'm not sure why they didn't pick it up, but we had talked about it before when I went up there to be there with them. And I did share with them that about the noxious weeds part. So I shared that with their council.
Okay, but an amendment that you sought to go did not get on the finance.
Correct. This is the one that Senator Hester is now putting forward is one that I definitely had brought up there. She had told me about
we have 2 options. We can either hold it to try to persuade them to put this amendment on, or we ourselves, after some discussion, could put it on and send it back. It's sort of we can do whatever process wise. Okay. There's no reason.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, this is for Dara. I apologize. This is Dara's bill.
Because I didn't, after I shared it with them, I didn't go back.
Yes.
Then it has to go back upstairs.
No, we know that.
Well, no,
but it's just, do we send it back with the amendment?
Can we amend it here and send it back to them?
Yeah,
exactly. So we got 2 options here.
We do.
That said, why don't you just refresh our memory for everybody who was not a Hester or a Augustine about this amendment that you discussed. Either one, you 2 or Dara, you're familiar with the amendment that Senators Augustine and Hester are talking about?
Yes. So this amendment would address concerns regarding noxious weeds transferring seeds among the agricultural community. It is language that is often used in bills of this type. It was actually chapters 463 and chapters 464 of last year's session, which were Senate Bill and House Bill 62, used the same language.
Okay. So, basically this would be this. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go on there.
My understanding is that the Finance Committee are not opposed to to this amendment being.
Well, that makes it a little simpler.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, let's just, does anybody want to move that amendment? Okay. So second, from Senator Hester. Okay, any discussion about this amendment? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of adding this amendment and sending it back to the Finance Committee with that amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, that amendment carries. We still have to vote now on the amended version of the bill. Is there a motion favorable with that additional amendment? Augustine, favorable. Hester, second. Okay, any further discussion on Senate Bill 178 with this additional amendment? Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 178 with the amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, carries unanimously, so we will send it back to Finance. Okay, Senate Bill 258.
Senate Bill 258, Department of General Services, State Buildings and Facilities, Energy Conservation and Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reductions. This departmental bill codifies and implements the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order 0101-2023-07, which requires that the state reduce energy consumption in state-owned buildings by 20% by 2031 compared with a fiscal. My microphone. Do I need to finish that sentence? The executive order requires that the state reduce energy consumption in state-owned buildings by 20% by 2031 compared with a fiscal 2018 baseline. There are no amendments and no opposition testimony was provided.
Okay, this bill had no opposition. Any discussion? And there were no amendments.
Right.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, a favorable from Senator Augustine. Is there a second from Senator Brooks? Again, for any further discussion before we vote? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of Senate Bill 258 clean with no amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate 258 carries unanimously. 298, Alexis.
Senate Bill 298, State Board of Electricians Licensing Penalties. This departmental bill grants the Board of Electricians the option to impose a civil penalty up to $5,000 for each violation, instead of or in addition to taking other actions like reprimanding or revoking an electrician's license. This bill was placed on hold last week. There have been amendments discussed and consensus reached by two of the members in committee, included within our packet on page 3, if I'm not mistaken, on page 5. And the amendment requires the Board of Electricians to submit a report to our committee in the House Economic Matters Committee on licensing approvals and complaints by October 1st, 2024. The report should analyze the number and types of complaints, the type, the date of the complaint, the date the complaint was resolved, the average time that has taken the board to approve each license, and an explanation of a plan to prevent future backlogs and complaints in the future.
Okay, the two members that were referenced, do they want to add some more meat to the conversation?
Question, because I know I was working it separately and I didn't realize my colleague was, so this incorporates both of the.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a Carozza Lewis Young collaboration amendment here. Does anyone want to move that amendment? Senator Lewis Young, move the amendment. Senator Carozza, would you want to second the amendment? All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendment carries. We have in front of us now Senate Bill 298 as amended. Is there a motion? Senator Lewis Young moves favorable. Senator Washington second. Discussion. Okay, seeing none. All in favor of Senate Bill 298 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, bill carries unanimously. Next up, Dara, Senate Bill 305.
Senate Bill 305, Department of Natural Resources, Maryland Geological Survey Fund establishment. This departmental bill establishes the Maryland Geological Survey Fund in the Department of Natural Resources to finance the direct and indirect costs of administering the Maryland Geological Survey, including long-term budgeting and planning for survey projects, procurements, and equipment purchases. There are no amendments to the bill and no opposition testimony was provided.
Okay, any discussion, questions for Dara on Senate Bill 305? Okay, Is there a motion? Motion from anybody? Favorable from Senator Augustine, second from Senator Brooks. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Senate Bill 305 clean, no amendments, no opposition. Raise your hand. All opposed? Seeing no opposition, the bill carries unanimously. Senate Bill 305. Next up, Stacy, Senate Bill 377.
Senate Bill 377, Higher Education Teacher Development and Retention Program Definition. This bill expands eligibility for Teacher Development and Retention Program educator stipends, a pilot program that terminates on June 30th, 2029, and provides initial stipends and internship stipends to include an otherwise eligible individual who is initially enrolled in a Maryland community college. There are no amendments and there was no opposition at the hearing.
Okay, we have a motion favorable from Senator Augustine. Is there a second? Second from Senator Brooks. Discussion on Senate Bill 377. Okay, all in favor, Senate Bill 377, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries. Next up, Senate Bill 411, Alexis.
Senate Bill 411, Department of Veterans Affairs renaming and Deputy Secretary of Military Family Policy and Programs. This bill renames the Department of Veterans Affairs to be the Department of Veterans and Military Families. The bill appoints a new Deputy Secretary position to be appointed by the Secretary of the renamed department. There are no amendments.
Okay, Senator Washington, I remember, well, let's start with Senator Brooks. Yeah. Okay, well, Senator Washington, you're the one that had, as I recall from the hearing, questions of you. You good now? Good. Okay, Senator Brooks, you want to move?
Yeah, I would like to be added to co-sponsor.
Okay, anybody else want to be a co-sponsor of this bill? Senate Bill 411, renaming this, the
And
department. We have Senator Augustine, Brooks. Anybody else? Okay.
Nope.
So we got no amendments?
No amendment, no
okay.
amendment, other than the committee co-sponsor amendment.
Yeah, okay, well, all in favor of the co-sponsor amendments, adding Brooks and Augustine, raise your hand. All opposed, those sponsored amendments carry. Okay, Senate Bill 411, as amended, we already had a motion and a second. All in favor, Senate Bill 411, as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 411 carries. Okay, we'll go Stacy, Senate Bill 441 from Senator Bottle.
Senate Bill 441, Janet L. Hoffman Loan Assistance Repayment Program, Nancy Grasmick Public School Professional Award School Nurses. This bill expands eligibility for the Nancy Grasmick Public School Professional Award to include public school nurses with 2 years of experience who provide health services in a public school and are employed by a local school system or local health department to provide health services through an agreement with a local board of education. The bill also expands the requirements of the Maryland Higher Education Commission to publicize the program to include doing so to eligible public school nurses in an effort to recruit and retain nurses working in public schools in the state. There were no amendments and there are no opposition at the hearing.
Questions, discussion, motions? Move favorable, Senator Augustine, second from Senator Lewis Young. Okay, again, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Senate Bill 441, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 441 carries unanimously. Next up, bill from Senator Mary Washington, Senate Bill 500. Stacy?
Senate Bill 500, Education, Child Care Career and Professional Development Fund alterations. This bill alters the qualifications for an award from the Child Care Career and Professional Development Fund to include an individual who has committed to work in an approved child care setting for at least 20 hours per week for a period of time determined by the Office of Child Care within the Maryland State Department of Education after completing a required course of study. The bill requires awards from the fund to be prioritized to the following applicants: an applicant who has not completed any college courses for credit from an accredited college or university, an applicant who attends or has been accepted by an accredited college or university that offers native language or bilingual coursework in early childhood education or a related field. An award recipient must repay the office the funds received if the recipient does not perform the service obligation. However, the repayment may be waived or deferred if the recipient provides satisfactory evidence of extenuating circumstances, including an illness or a disability. that prevent the recipient from fulfilling the service obligation. The bill applies only prospectively. There are no amendments and no opposition at the hearing.
Okay, any questions for either Stacy or the sponsor, Senator Washington? Yes, Senator Simoner.
So I had a couple questions at the hearing. So how much, if you can give me a little history, how long has this fund been established roughly? And how much have we been allocating annually roughly to the sponsor or the legal counsel?
They've been, I would say, been administering the program since 2008.
Okay.
I don't have the dollar amount, but currently there are 23 institutions that are participating in it, and 75 childcare providers completed degree programs.
Oh, so it's bringing back memory now.
Yeah.
So how does this program work? I mean, what I was thinking was you have a pot of money, applicants come, you give them the money and you run out of money and that's it. But I think they said it was somewhat a different program. How's that work?
Institutions. The institutions apply, and then they have cohorts of students that move through the program. So the money gets to the institution and the institution moves them through with the appropriate services.
Okay, so there's still a limited amount of money that the institutions apply for.
Mhm,
And then when they're out of money, the awards stop.
correct.
So I brought up in the hearing that the way this is drafted, it prioritizes one certain group, which I don't know if would exhaust the funds and thereby not allowing it for anybody else. But it says that you can't have any college course credits to be in the priority. So I brought up the dual role for high school. They would be not allowed to be in this priority just simply because they did dual rolling. Is that true? Dual enrollment?
No, I don't think that that's. Well, two things. I just want to clarify. This is not prioritizing a group. It's prioritizing, like I, for example, I told you my son, while he doesn't identify as Latinx, he speaks Spanish. So anyone can become a dual language, can take dual language classes. So, and it doesn't even require that you have to get a certificate in dual language. It's just saying taking some coursework. And if you look at what all the childcare, all of our local childcare systems are advertising for people that speak more than one language. So it's addressing a very specific need. And then accepted, they have to be accepted into the program, as Stacy said. So I'm assuming if they've been accepted into the program that we would, and also prioritize doesn't mean you don't get it. It just said we're looking for, they're not setting a number for how many are in that group.
And that's helpful. But the way I read prioritizing, say you have 100 students.
Mhm. Yeah.
25 of them are multilingual or got accepted and they haven't had any college credits.
Okay.
And 20 of them would exceed the fund. Then that group, when I say group, I just mean the qualifications that are put in here, not a specific, basically a group that has not had any college credits. And I guess the easiest way is to say they're bilingual. They would get all the money, and those that aren't bilingual would then, who currently can get it now, would not be able to get it because of this prioritization.
We're playing like games. I think that the prioritization means that first they would have to find an institution that has a cohort of student that would exhaust all those funds. And I don't think that's very likely. So I think they're looking to have certain types of individuals. They're looking for bilingual. They're looking for people who they haven't had any college credits to get toward this childcare degrees. So they're trying to force this certain demographic into these types of programs. But it doesn't mean, as you said, that the other people won't get it, because obviously they're not applying right now to these types of things. So yes, the funds can go to other things, but they're looking for institutions that might put together a program that would meet some of those. I think it's odd is the way that this statute is drafted is not how the department actually implements it. It's very odd. I'm not gonna lie.
And I support what you're trying to accomplish. I just don't want the way this is drafted, that a certain demographic gets all the money to the exclusion of everybody else.
It does not. say
Nothing,
that.
I just to the committee. There's none of our programs work that way. We have all kinds, we have STEM programs, we have all kinds of programs where we're prioritizing certain things. Also, there is a need. So if we only put forward a cohort of people where well, actually, it's not even people, it's that that it says the university has to offer it, right? So it's not even that the student is taking it, but the university offers native language. If anything, it's incentivizing the universities to offer language. So do you agree that this is not about the student? It's saying that the university offers a native language or bilingual coursework.
The university could not give the money to an individual who didn't meet the qualifications in the statute. So even though the way that MSD implements the program is by doing it by university, a student who didn't meet these things could not get the money. So for example, if they didn't have one documented year of experience working with groups of children in approved setting, they couldn't be in the cohort and they wouldn't receive funds through the program. So I mean, there's that kind of dual level.
So what you're saying, Stacey, is that there's already decisions being made about certain qualifications and students have to meet those qualifications. And this is just adding another option, another thing for the schools to look for when putting their cohorts together.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay,
So I guess I have a
sorry.
question.
Yeah,
Is
go-
this to the extent where you're wanting to hold it and amend it, or are we able to move forward? I just kind of need to know where we're going with this.
I mean, we can do it this year, but I'd like to either get a report or follow up with them afterwards to
That's fair.
see if this is implemented the way it's being stated that it's implemented.
Okay.
Because I don't want to exclude other groups. I want to
Okay.
include this group, but I don't want to exclude other groups
Okay.
just there.
Okay, just back to Senator Washington's point then. Please clarify what you just said. How do you want to translate it into what we're doing here?
Move on. I'll just
Okay.
ask the department.
Okay.
Do-
Okay, any further questions, before we entertain motions or further discussions? Any more questions for Senator Washington or for Stacy? Okay, and there are no amendments, correct? Okay, so is there a motion? Senator Washington? Okay, with second, Senator Augustine. Again, any further discussion? Okay, let's take a roll call because I don't know what everybody's thinking here.
All right, Senator Augustine? Yes. Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion? Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young? Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza?
Yes.
Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Hester? Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Salmonere?
Yes.
Senator Salmonere, yes. Senator Feldman?
Okay, yes, that bill carries unanimous. Senate Bill 500 carries unanimously. Next up, Senator A. Washington, Senate Bill 517, Stacy.
Senate Bill 517, Next Generation Scholars of Maryland Program Administrator Alterations. This bill transfers primary responsibility for the administration of the Next Generation Scholars of Maryland Program from the Maryland State Department of Education to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. The bill must be construed to apply only prospectively and may not have any effect on the program administration for the fiscal 2025 grant cycle. There is one amendment that's on page 7 in your packet with a reprint beginning on page 9. This is offered by the chair, and this amendment would require MHEC in collaboration with MSDE to publicize the program in a certain manner. It requires MSDE to assist the commission in the review and selection of nonprofit organizations to administer the program in local school systems, and it clarifies information that the program must provide to participants regarding financial aid.
Okay, let's take some questions on Senate Bill 517. for the amendments that was described by Stacy? Okay, yes. Okay, move the amendments. Is there a second? Second, Senator Lewis Young. Again, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, amendment carries unanimously. We have now Senate Bill 517 as amended in front of us. Any further discussion? Okay, is there a motion? Favorable, Senator Washington, second for Senator Augustine. All in favor, Senate Bill 517 as amended, raise your hand. Okay, that bill carries unanimously. Next up, Senate Bill 522 from Senator Augustine.
Senate Bill 522, Charter Counties Enforcement of Local Laws. This bill authorizes a charter county to enforce civil and criminal fines up to $5,000. Current law sets the maximum fine at $1,000 for violations of county ordinances, resolutions, and bylaws. There are no amendments for us to consider on this bill.
Okay, Senator Augustine, okay, is there a second? Senator Washington, discussion about Senate Bill 522. Any questions, discussion? Okay, Senator Carozza.
I'm just trying to bring myself back up to speed on SB 522 and saw that there, I guess, was some unfavorable with the Maryland Multi-Housing Association and the Apartment and Office Building Association, and I just didn't know if the bill sponsor could just comment on that.
We have not updated the charges for this since the 90s. We literally just put a bill in, everybody just voted for electricians to have a penalty up to $5,000 on Senate Bill 298. Because we know that this is an appropriate number at this time to have an impact on businesses. The two entities that did submit their testimony represent the largest multi-family properties in our state, and surely have significant enough resources to manage a fine of this size. This is important for as a deterrent opportunity up to, not, they don't have to do it, but it just gets us closer to something that's going to get folks to really respond and help us to keep our quality of life in our localities, in our counties.
Okay, any further questions for the sponsor for Alexis? Okay, we had a motion and a second from Senator Washington. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, Senate Bill 522, raise your hand. All opposed? Senate Bill 522 carries unanimously. Okay, let's go to the back page. Senate Bill 527. Stacy, describe the bill. Yeah, why don't you let her describe it and then you could, yeah, right.
There's a sign.
See, that was a sign.
All right. Okay, why don't we do this? Let's let Stacy describe the bill, and then as we talked about, first describe the bill so people even know.
Sure. Senate Bill 527, Community Colleges Contraception Access Requirements. This bill requires each community college, in consultation with students and student organizations, to develop and implement a plan to provide students with access to over-the-counter contraception by certain dates. By September 1, 2025, and annually thereafter, each community college must report to the Maryland Higher Education Commission on implementation of the plan. By October 1, 2025, and annually thereafter, MHEC must report to the General Assembly on information collected. On request, the Maryland Department of Health may assist a community college in developing a plan and consulting and collaborating with organizations with expertise in providing over-the-counter contraception through vending machines. There is one amendment in your packet, and that's offered by Senator Kelly. And this amendment establishes one date, August 1st, 2025, for both the development and implementation of the plan required under the legislation, instead of different dates for development and implementation. Just for some context, For some reason, the Senate and the House bills were introduced differently, although they're cross files. Having discussions with the House, this was the compromise amendment.
The House moved this bill yet or not? Or we don't know.
I think they're in the process.
Okay, that said, Senator Carozza.
Just wanted to explain to my colleagues in the chair for my request for a hold. I believe that this legislation might have been developed before they realized the community colleges would be facing a $22 million CADE funding cut. I met with the students statewide from the Community College Association. They were totally focused on restoring the funding, and not one of them brought up their support for SB 527. And I just think at this time, when we're focused on trying to restore these budget cuts for the community colleges, the last thing we should be doing is putting a mandate on our community colleges. So for those purposes, I'm going to hold it and hopefully can find, maybe work with my colleagues on an amendment.
Okay, as I said at the outset, you get an automatic one hold at this point, so that that's what you've done. So now we're going to move to Senate Bill 547, and we're going to go to you, Dara.
Senate Bill 547, Wildlife Traveling Animal Acts Prohibition. This bill prohibits, with specified exceptions, person from allowing for the performance of a covered animal in a traveling animal act. A covered animal is defined as a bear, cougar, elephant, jaguar, leopard, excluding clouded leopard, lion, non-human primate, and tiger. The term also includes a hybrid of any one of these animals. A traveling animal act means any performance of animals for which the animals are transported in a mobile or traveling housing facility to, from, or between locations for the purpose of the performance. There are two amendments. The first amendment can be found on page 15 of your package. This is a sponsor amendment that removes the authority of an officer or agent of the Department of Natural Resources to enforce the bill. There is also an amendment which is a standalone sheet. Currently, as previously mentioned, clouded leopards are excluded from the scope of this bill. What this amendment would do would be to include the clouded leopard under this bill, with one exception: in the case where a clouded leopard is being transported to a location for the sole purpose of providing public education about the species or conservation.
Okay, questions for Dara? Yes, Senator Carozza.
Thank you. I saw that the Maryland Department of Natural Resources had a letter of information.
Yep.
So it was just since I don't know this bill in detail, did they raise any issues that the amendment addresses or that we should be aware of before we vote?
So the sponsors amendment addresses the concern that they had raised. They had mentioned that they did not believe that they had the capacity to enforce the provisions of this bill, which is why the sponsors amendment removes them.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions for Dara? Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Senator Lewis Young.
Yeah, who will enforce it?
So if you look at, pardon me, page 3 of the bill,
Okay.
lines 13 to 17, it reads that the provisions of this section may be enforced by the state or local law enforcement officer, or factoring in the amendment, which is, I presume, your question, remove line 15, and then line 16, the local animal control authority for the jurisdiction where the violation occurs.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Dara? Okay, does anybody want to move the amendments? Senator Lewis Young has moved the amendments. Is there a second? Second, Senator Washington. All in favor of the two amendments described by Dara, raise your hand. All opposed, those two amendments carry. Sure, question from Senator Simoner.
I was just looking through, I didn't see monkeys on here. Are monkeys included?
Non-human primates.
Oh, is that what that is? Oh, okay.
That's why we have committee counsel, explain those things. Okay, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, do we had a motion and we had a favor from Senator Lewis Young. I was looking for a second over here. Senator Brooks, okay. Any further discussion before we take a vote? Okay, all in favor, Senate Bill 547 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? Bill carries unanimously. I apologize, correction. That bill carries 10-1 or 9-1. I'm sorry, 9-1 with Senator Gallion read and Senator Kagan is excused. Next up, Senate Bill 553, Senator Corderman's bill. We're going to go to Dara. Back to you, Dara.
Senate Bill 553, Maryland Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council membership. This bill alters the composition of the Maryland Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, or ZVIC, to include a representative of an electric vehicle driver advocacy organization, a light-duty plug-in electric drive vehicle manufacturer, a heavy-duty plug-in electric drive vehicle manufacturer, and the New Vehicle Dealer Association in the state, the Secretary of General Services, and one additional member of the environmental community. The bill also alters reporting requirements for the council. There are 2 amendments to the bill, and both make alterations to the membership of the council. I do not have my package. I'll just read from here. The first amendment adds the following members only: the Secretary of General Services, representatives of both light duty and heavy duty plug-in electric drive vehicle manufacturers. Additionally, the representatives of the Baltimore Electric Vehicle Initiative, the Retail Electric Supplier Community, and the Maryland Automobile Dealers Association are no longer replaced. The second amendment adds 1 representative of the automotive dismantling and recycling industry to the membership of the council. Both amendments also include a technical or corrective change to the title and purpose paragraph of the bill. Just to address, because I know questions about numbers of members on councils have been raised before. Currently, ZVIC has 28 members. The bill is drafted, brings it up to 32. The sponsors amendment would change this to 30. Just the chair's amendment would change it to 33. And if both amendments passed, it would be 31.
You know, as was established by Senator Augustine early in session, we want to settle ultimately on odd numbers, but that's not the main. We just ended up at 31. Okay, questions on any of that as described? Yes, Senator Augustine.
So I'm not sure, the utilities asked to have a utility person on here. Is it on there or it's not?
Help me out on this one. I don't recall.
I mean, that's what I'm just looking at.
Yeah.
I see in here.
So a number of requests were made for additional members to be kept on or to be added. I believe there is one who was not added, but it's escaping me now. Looking at the reprint, the ones who were added, perhaps that's the easiest
That's
way
easy. Okay.
to.
Where's, it's just in the list?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at their
Yeah, let-
testimony about a investor-owned utility. I don't know if you recall or not.
So it would add, as amended by both amendments, it would add the Secretary of General Services. The representative of a heavy duty plug-in electric drive vehicle manufacturer and light duty. Currently, it's just one representative of a plug-in electric drive vehicle manufacturer with no specification.
Yeah, there's a reference to electric companies in the state.
Excuse me?
Electric companies in the state, is that a utility?
I don't know if that would mean a utility.
Okay, maybe you know what I might suggest, let's tighten it.
Utility? Oh, that's the definition of utility?
Okay, we're gonna go to our public utilities. Is it?
Include the cooperatives. It can include the 4 investor-owned utilities. So it's not just the investor-owned utilities because we can have
The co-op.
co-ops in
Those
here as
others.
well. But so it's a little broader, but they could be included in that.
Okay.
There's
two of
those.
All right. You said there are two of those,
Existing.
so. So one could be them?
Okay, well, yeah, let's keep, let's talk and let's make sure we're, yes, Senator Hester? Is it the same line of inquiry or sort of a separate issue?
I think it's the same line of inquiry. So I'm just looking at page 24 of our packet.
All right.
So they're eliminating. It looks like they're eliminating both the Maryland Automobile Dealers Association and one representative of the retail electric supplier community.
That's the bill as drafted. The sponsors amendment would undo that removal.
Oh, thank you. So is the electric supplier, I mean, just to the utility question, is that the same thing or not?
Well, Alexis is saying
Alexis.
it could be them.
Well, or it's,
Not a supplier.
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Not a
No.
supplier.
If
you're saying electric
company-
companies is a
Company.
broad term. It includes the four investor utilities, but also co-ops. I mean, it's a broader term. I think I don't want to
Right,
misstate
yeah.
it, but that's, I think what you said, the term
Mhm.
electric companies would represent, but
That's right.
any additional questions, concerns of any sort? Okay, well, that said, does anyone want to move the amendments, the Quarterman sponsor amendments? Or anybody have questions they still need to have answered by way of it, taking advantage of the
I mean,
hold
can I
option?
just,
Yeah,
the thing is, I mean, they do have a pretty, a role to play, I think.
okay,
in-
here, let's just hold this. Let's get some clarification on exactly who was talking to who wanted to be in, who didn't. Let's just clean that up, clear it up, and then we'll come back. So let's hold that.
So,
And
and just, Mr. like, just to sort of like say, so if we're talking about the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, let's just think about what that means. And I mean,
And for by way of history, I sponsored the bill that created what was then called the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, EVIC, which I was on. And then they later, called it the C, or it got renamed, but so there's
Yeah.
some history. Yeah, back to you. You were-
absolutely. So I'm just saying that there is this, certainly there is a significant role in this for for the grid folks. I mean, for the folks who are
Yeah,
doing it.
okay.
So.
Okay, totally fair. Okay, any other, just, if we're gonna hold it, any other questions we can task Dara with getting some clarification on before we revisit?
Just so that we know, could you figure out who the current rep is? That's the one representative of the retail electric supplier, because that could be a utility, right? No,
And if it has the electric supply, if it has an electric company, that's the one that we're saying could be the utility part,
I see.
the distribution part, right? Can you say it that way?
Right.
We're talking about the
Right.
distribution portion.
Mhm.
The supplier is the supply
Right.
portion.
That's right.
And
So
di-
those are like the two different parts. The electric company
Well, the electric
is the
company is a-
distribution portion. Is that-
Right. It's inclusive of that distinction.
Okay,
Okay, well, Dara's taking some copious notes there, so you're gonna nobody's gonna have any confusion about this when we come back, okay? Okay, now let's move on to Senator Watson. We've got Senator Watson's bill, Senate Bill 564. And Alexis, why don't you tell us what that does?
Senate Bill 564, real estate brokers licensing, license renewals, and continuing education. This bill makes several alters several provisions to the licensing and continuing education requirements for real estate brokers, associate brokers, and salespersons. Under the bill, licenses will automatically expire on a staggered basis instead of the March 1st or April 1st date, depending on the license that is established in current law. The bill requires the Real Estate Commission to send a renewal notice at least 60 days before instead of 1 month before a license expires. The bill repeals provisions requiring a licensee to submit a certificate of completion of a continuing education course ahead of license renewal, and instead authorizes an entity that taught this continuing education course to submit that information to the Real Estate Commission directly and electronically within 14 days after the course is completed. The bill requires those continuing education courses to be completed within 30 days before the license expires and makes a licensee subject to a quote reasonable processing fee if that is not met. Finally, the bill removes two different criteria that must be incorporated in a continuing education course to include discussions of flipping and fraudulent real estate practices under current law that has to be covered in the bill that does not have to be covered. There are sponsor amendments on pages 27 and 28 of the packet. The first strikes that reasonable processing fee and alters it to the term reinstatement fee for purpose of the penalty that a licensee is subject to if they do not complete their continuing education requirements. And secondly, it conforms the posture of this bill to that of the House by removing the repeal of flipping and fraudulent practices. Now that continuing education course will continue to have to include information on flipping and fraudulent practices.
Senator Watson, you want to add anything to what Alexis just described, or? Is that the case? Okay. Okay, before we, anything more on just the amendments that was Alexis just described from Senator Watson? Okay, seeing none. Okay, well, first up, okay, well, let's do a quick sponsor amendment separate than that. Anybody else want to be on the bill other than Senator Simonaire? Okay, we've got Brooks, Carosa, and Simonaire, part of a sponsor amendment. All in favor of that sponsor amendment, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed. Those three members are on the bill. Now back to the amendments that were described that proffered by Senator Watson. Any, again, further discussion or questions? Seeing none. Senator Watson, you want to move those amendments? Okay, is there a second? Second from Senator Simonaire. All in favor of those sponsor amendments, raise your hand. All opposed. Amendments carry. Okay, we got Senator Watson moving favorable on the bill as amended. Second for Senator Simonaire. All in favor of Senate Bill 564 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed. That bill carries unanimously. Next up, Senate Bill 629. Alexis.
Mr. Chair, can we hold this one, please?
We're going to hold that one, which brings us to Senator Brooks, Senate Bill 916. Dara.
Senate Bill 916, Fish and Wildlife, Endangered and Threatened Species, Definitions, Petitions, and Regulations. This bill codifies the way in which the Department of Natural Resources identifies and reviews endangered and threatened species. The bill alters certain definitions within the Endangered Species of Fish Conservation Act and Non-Game and Endangered Species Conservation Act. The bill sets requirements for a petition submitted to the department to conduct a review of whether a species should be listed or unlisted as an endangered or threatened species. The bill requires the Secretary of Natural Resources by July 1st, 2026, and at least every 5 years thereafter, to review and, if warranted, update regulations adopted under these acts that contain the list of endangered species and threatened species. There is one amendment which can be found on page 29 of your package. This amendment alters the definition of wildlife as it relates to the Non-Game and Endangered Species Conservation Act. There was no opposition at the bill hearing.
Okay, Senator Brooks, anything you want to add something? Looks like
Amendment was requested by DNR, so.
any further questions, discussion? Yes, Senator Gallion.
Just basically just codifies existing practices, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, codifies existing practices. There was no opposition. Any motion on the amendment? Senator Brooks moves the amendment. Second, Senator Augustine, that one amendment. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendment carries. Now have Senate Bill 916 as amended in front of us. Is there a motion? Senator Brooks. Second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of Senate Bill 916 as amended, raise your hand. Okay, that bill, Senate Bill 916 carries unanimously. Okay. There is, yeah, before we close out, there is one more bill on a separate list. And then we'll do that. There is a standalone bill over on voting list number 10 that you should have. Do you have that, Senator Hester? One from Senator Washington, Senate Bill 524. Alexis, would you describe
Sure.
that
Senate
bill?
Yep, Senate Bill 524, General Assembly, Committee Chairs and Vice Chairs, Gender Neutral Language. This bill changes from Chairman and Vice Chairman to Chair and Vice Chair, and from Co-Chairman to Chair. Several references to committee leadership positions throughout Title II of the state government article. There are no amendments to the bill.
Okay, we have a motion favorable from Senator Augustine. Is there a second from Senator Washington? Okay, any discussion about the bill? Senate Bill 524. Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 524, raise your hand. All opposed, Senate Bill 524 carries unanimously, which brings us to 14 bills that we did pass. Yes, sir.
Before we before we break, I actually made a mistake. When I went back and looked on Senate Bill 553, I think that's the one, right? From Senator Corderman. I think it's all set. I was looking at it the wrong way.
Okay,
If we could.
Can we reconsider that?
we didn't do anything. We held it, so it's, we
Can
can
I-
sort of
can we-
retake it up.
Can we?
Okay, all in favor of pulling the hold,
Yeah,
raise your hand.
thank you.
The hold is hereby released.
Yeah.
And therefore, it is back in front of us, Senate Bill 553.
Can I move favorable on that one?
And Senator Augustine, well, first of all, we had some amendments. Let's
Oh,
take
my
up the
bad.
amendments first.
Yes.
Senator Augustine, you
on
want to
the
move those
amendments?
amendments? Okay, second on the amendments. Is there a second on these amendments from Quarterman? Okay, so there's something about some of these bills. Yeah, before we take a vote, we want to make sure we see. Okay, good, because everybody's watching on the internet. Second from Senator Watson. Okay, all in favor of those amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendments carry. We're now back to Senate Bill 553 as amended. Correct, from Senator Augustine, a second from Senator Hester, or is it a question? Okay, it's subject to a rehold, but though, okay,
Just like to understand who's included and who's not.
The
okay.
electric companies are included. What I was misreading was a request not from the electric companies, but from gas. And there's no need for that. So we
Gotcha.
can just move.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we had a motion, we had a second, we had a favorable as amended from Senator Augustine. Who was the second? We need a second. Senator Hester. Okay, all in favor, Senate Bill 553 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, the Quarterman Bill 553 carries unanimously, so I revise. We up to 15 bills we just are sending to the floor. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna enjoy your weekend and, yes, okay, I won't gavel anything. Yes,
Before you
ma'am.
gavel, and I know you like a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
firm gavel.
Absolutely.
Do we have any just idea about next Friday, just for planning purposes?
We know that next Friday is not likely to be another pro forma. So we're not gonna be able to how we did last Friday and today, right? As far as, because, if we have a session at 11.
Right.
We're gonna have to figure out a sort of a somewhat different model than we've used the last two Fridays. We do have 18 bills currently on the schedule. Well, we were, we thought perhaps there was gonna be, because we have to get all these 350 bills heard. So we may have to do some modification, yeah. Right, so next Friday could be a little bit challenging, although don't believe the 18, a lot of those bills are, I think, very few witnesses kind of thing. So I can't guarantee that, because you don't know until the day before. Truthfully, we just need to tough it out for another week. or
No,
week and a half.
it's more for
Yeah.
planning. I was trying to figure,
Okay.
I figure we're working on Friday. Was it before or
Yeah,
after both?
Well, I
That's
think
all.
it's gonna be, we have an 11 o'clock session. And after session, we come here and we just jam out the bills and then we're probably not gonna vote. We won't vote that day. Try to do our Thursday voting. And Friday, we'll do the hearings. Obviously, you can plan accordingly if we're not gonna vote.